Hello, thanks for joining today's webcast, part of BlackLine's Finance Innovation Week. We will get started in just about 1 minute from now to give folks the opportunity to log in. Again, we're going to get started in just another minute. Please stand by. All right, thanks for joining us today. My name is Michael Schultz. I am BlackLine's Director of Strategic Accounting, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's webcast. Today's webcast is part of BlackLine's Finance Innovation Week, talking all about making the move to modern accounting. Up on the screen right now, I've got all the other various webcasts that are part of Finance Innovation Week. We had one this morning, earlier today, and then we've got one this afternoon, three tomorrow, and then 2 on Thursday. So if you're needing CPE and want to learn some more about making the move to modern accounting, hopefully we see you on one of the future webcasts. If you can't make one of the future webcasts when we do them live, just know that we will be putting these on demand later. And unfortunately, when we put them on demand, you will not be able to get CPE. And we'll talk a little bit more about CPE in a second, but just know that each one of these sessions is eligible for CPE. Well, the session we're here today is with one of BlackLine's partners, RGP, and it's delivering practical client solutions using BlackLine's enhanced transaction matching product. And before I turn it over to Steve to kick us off and get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation, just wanted to cover some of the housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, there's various application widgets you can use. If you have questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your questions. We will try to answer all of these questions during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, we will follow up later via email. Just know that we do capture and retain all of the questions. Also, you can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of the slide area, or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. That's just going to help you make the live view even larger. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the help widget, and that covers common technical issues. If your issue is simply slides are not advancing or your sound drops, try refreshing your browser, as that often fixes the common issues. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about CPE, and this webinar is eligible for 1 CPE credit. To be eligible and earn that credit, you're going to have to answer 3 of the polling questions that we're going to be putting out throughout this next hour. So don't worry, if you miss one, there will be an opportunity for another. And the other thing you need to do is you need to be logged in for at least 50 minutes, 50 minutes, in order to get that credit. When we pop up a polling question, you must click on the slide area to answer the poll and hit the submit button. Do not submit your answer via the Q&A widget. Once you've completed the requirements, your certificate will pop up in the webinar console and you'll be able to download your certificate. If you don't get to that before we close the webinar out, in about an hour, you'll be able to log back in the same way you did just now and download your certificate. And then finally, after the event is over, a survey will appear in the webinar console, as we always like to hear your input on your thoughts on the webinar today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Steve McKechnie from RGP to talk about BlackLine's enhanced matching products. So with that, Steve.
Hi, Thank you so much for joining us today and this week at Finance Innovation Week. I just really want to thank you in particular for those of us who joined us at Beyond the Black. We've had a lot of really good feedback and response and really appreciate it. We're following up and taking a little deeper dive from what we did then, talking about transaction matching, and really do appreciate, again, you being here with us. If you missed us at Beyond the Black, our presentation is available on both RGP's and BlackLine's websites. And don't worry, you're not going to be left behind or left out if you didn't see it as we go today. So thank you again. I'd like to introduce our members of today's session. Especially want to thank Tiffany Tucker from First Midwest Bank and Heather Schneider from Pacific Woodtech. Really thank them so much for taking time out of their busy schedules today to join us, and thank their respective companies for allowing them to participate with this. So we'll talk a bit more about their case studies here coming up. Also with us are Yvette Lightfoot and Dan Schiapicasa, who are two of our senior BlackLine SMEs. And then I'm Steve McKechnie. I'm just the MC, if you will. These four folks have done all of the work and the reason that we're here. Want to share their stories and help you with your journey in matching with BlackLine. Very quickly, and this is a reminder slide from our Beyond the Black presentation. Over the past year or two, BlackLine made some significant changes to their transaction matching product, and a lot of it has empowered the customers and their implementation partners, been able to implement more quickly and less expensively. And so we're going to talk about how that has been very, very helpful and very, very beneficial to both Pacific Woodtech and First Midwest Bank. We have a polling question.
Thanks, Steve. All right, as Steve mentioned, we are at our first polling question. So with this polling question, again, remember you have to answer 3 polling questions and be on for 55 minutes to get your CPE credit. And again, just click right on the slide with whatever answer serves you best and hit the submit button, and we'll get you recorded. So let's just dive right into this polling question. What is your experience with BlackLine's transaction matching product? I'm a BlackLine user with significant and recent matching experience. I'm a BlackLine user with limited or no matching experience. I'm not a BlackLine user currently, or I'm just here for the CPE credits. And if it was me back in the day when I was a client, I would have been, I was a BlackLine user with limited or no matching experience. Unfortunately, when I was a customer many years ago, matching really didn't exist. So I wish it did. So let's go ahead and give you guys just another couple of seconds to answer this before we turn over for the results. Steve, any thoughts on who's here and what we're going to look at on the answers here?
I'm just excited that there's no wrong answer. It's not like a test you can fail. There are no wrong answers here. But yeah, I'm hoping that we have folks who have some to significant experience, but even if not, we're looking forward to having conversation, get you excited about matching, like those who have had some matching experience.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the responses here. All right, so we have, almost 40% not a BlackLine user, and we still got some folks that are here for the credits. But we definitely have some, we have I can't do math without a 10 key, almost 40% that are BlackLine users. So anyway, great mix of people on this call. So hopefully everyone leaves with something, even if you are just here for the credit. So, we welcome everybody. So with that, Steve, I'm going to turn it back over to you to take us away and get into the presentation.
Thanks. And thank you for our first polling question. Glad that everybody's participating. Glad everyone's wide awake. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce both Heather and Yvette, who worked on the Pacific Woodtech project with matching. Heather is their controller and is a CPA. Yvette, one of our senior BlackLine SMEs. And I'm just going to open up with thank you, Heather and Yvette, and want to ask, what were the challenges you were facing, and how did matching help?
Well, Steve, thanks for having us. Our close process is fairly unique in the fact that we do a full close of each month, including a full inventory count and reconciliation of all of our GL accounts, and that all has to be done within 3 business days. This is a requirement of our ownership, and we do this with a very small team. It is myself, my CFO, 1 AP person, and 1 payroll person. So basically, there are 3 of us closing the books every month in the actual accounting department. One of our big problems that we were running into, or one of our roadblocks, was that my bank reconciliations, if everything went smoothly, were taking me about a half a day to do, which in a 3-day close is a significant portion of that time. And of course, if anything doesn't tie out perfectly and you're sent down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what's wrong, that can take an entire day. Meanwhile, it was getting me to spend most of my time in transaction-based tasks during close as opposed to analysis and review. And it was really becoming a huge roadblock to meet the timelines that were set by our ownership. So we began to look at other options for us to speed up this process and make it less time-consuming, less manual. And BlackLine's transaction matching was a really great fit for us. We really looked into solutions for us that would free up myself and my CFO in order to be able to do what we really should be doing in closing, looking at variances, looking at aberrations within our transactions, and not be so manual and detailed in our review of every single transaction that goes on within the month. And then a big draw for us was we use NetSuite as our ERP, and there's a direct connection called the NetSuite connector that allows us to connect our data directly from NetSuite into BlackLine. So there's no time on our accounting end to have to make that process manual. And after the initial setup, there's also no requirement on our IT department's end. So that frees us up to not have to worry about IT getting behind or being pulled onto an important project or anything like that that doesn't allow them to get to accounting's needs. So it makes it very, very out of everybody's hands. It just does what it needs to do. We decided that we would start transaction matching with our banking accounts. We have 4 different bank accounts at 2 different banks that we fully reconcile every month, and there are transactions back and forth between the banks. There's transactions back and forth between the accounts within the banks. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of back and forth, and part of being able to match was to also set up feeds directly from our banks into BlackLine. Again, going with the theme of making everything very automated, so there is less hands-on, less need for my time, less need for my staff time. Additionally, setting up the controls that if the information is coming directly from the GL and the information is coming directly from the bank, we then have the backup that our auditors can see that, oh, this is a direct data feed. There's no playing with it. We don't have to worry about human error. We can see how everything is matched up and signed off, and saving us time in our audit. So we started that setup feed, and we learned a few lessons in that. Wouldn't you say, Yvette, that we learned a few lessons in setting up that feed from the banks?
Yes. One of the things that I would recommend for any company to do is to make sure that before you start an implementation that you have that you make that direct connection with the bank before you actually start having conversations with your implementation team. Just one, because it saves time, and then it also helps you to prepare for the implementation. So that way the bank is aware that that you have an implementation that's coming down the pipeline and that you're going to need their resources as well. And that way everyone's on the same page. So one of the challenges is making sure that you get time with that particular bank implementation team, so that way you can be embedded in their sprint for the month or week or however they choose to do their sprints for their projects. So that's some of the challenges that we had to face during this implementation. Heather?
I think even on that too, Yvette, it was finding the right person, getting the right communication going, and then even up front, getting the bank's requirements so we could communicate that to our IT department, because we had some miscommunications in the banks were asking for things and our IT department didn't understand what was needed. So there was a lot of back and forth within that too. And I think if we had done more prep on that at the beginning of implementation or even before implementation started, it would have saved us some time there as well. So that's definitely another lesson learned.
I agree.
But I will say that one of the things that I really love about transaction matching, because now with the direct feed from NetSuite and the direct feed from our banks, I don't have to wait until month end to find if there's some funky transaction that is popping out. BlackLine's telling me on a daily or every other day basis, depending on how many meetings are scheduled during the day. And if I don't get to reconciling that day, which there's that flexibility, I can go in and do it the next day, and that's fine. But I'm able to front load a lot more of the bank related month end items earlier in the month that allow me to find those things early, spend more time looking into things that I might need to than, rushed in 3 days at the end of the month when I've gotten the bank statement from the bank and I'm going into NetSuite and manually clicking off checks and deposits. And it allows me to be more strategic in the time I spend on these functions, which is huge for me. It allows me to even out my workflow, which is also huge for me. In that 3-day close, having something that ends up taking a half a day or 3/4 of a day can be exceedingly frustrating and make for some long evenings when you're still, working at 7, 8 o'clock at night, trying to make sure that you're taking care of these things on the front end so you don't hit the deadline at the back end. And the evening out of the workflow is very nice for me.
And then one of the benefits of that also is just making sure that we, because the specific Woodtech needed that flexibility, we decided to have the bank import the bank balance, the bank files daily, right? And so that way, even if you don't reconcile daily, you're still getting that you're still getting that automated feed on a daily basis. So
yeah,
that also helps as well, just to kind of have that transparency.
Yeah. So if I get to the point where, it's been a super busy week and I'm not able to get to reconciling on a daily basis, it's still there for me at the end of the week or 2 or 3 days later, and I can take care of it then. It gives me a lot of control of when I am able to focus on this, how much time I spend in any given day. And we have actually found things that I actually had a customer have one check attached to our check. We still have like 5 customers that pay via check. But I was able to call the customer within a couple days and be like, hey, this check cleared our bank, but it's not actually to us. It got stuck to another check and our lockbox processed it. So that's good on our end, being able to have those conversations with our customer and showing that we're paying attention and we care and these type of items are important to them, where I might not have caught it until month end, potentially, where now I'm catching it 2 or 3 weeks earlier. So they're able to reach out to the customer that check was for, or the vendor that check was for, and say, hey, just so you know, we found out this happened. We're sending you a new check.
Now, I was going to ask, has there been any benefit from a reporting standpoint for management, having that real-time information available?
Yeah, I would say that there is. It allows us to manage our cash flow a lot tighter. We have a very cyclical cash flow in the fact that we pay all of our raw material vendors on Thursdays. So we know that there's going to be a significant outbound cash flow on Thursdays. And being able to see on a daily basis and reconcile on a daily basis and have a better idea of exactly where that cash is going to be allows us to determine, are we going to pay down our line of credit? Are we going to draw on our line of credit? It's allowed us to manage our interest costs on that front as well, to give us that more day-to-day where we're not guessing. Oh, I think we're going to have X dollars at the end of this week. We should pay down the line of credit, or I think we're going to have to draw this many. We know exactly where the bank is on a daily basis without having to do an external spreadsheet, right? Where you're, adding deposits, subtracting checks, figuring out what's still outstanding. It's right there in front of you.
Right. And so how much time has that saved you? I'm guesstimating, how much time has that process saved you by having implemented transaction matching?
Oh, whew. I'd say it gives me about a half an hour back a day, probably, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you times that 2.5 hours a week times 52 weeks a year, that's what, 2 work weeks a year worth of hours, possibly. It's a lot less. I spend a lot less time on in the bank cash management than I have previously, because it's right there in front of me.
Well, Heather and Yvette, thank you so much. Just one last question, and Heather, glad that you found so many benefits to what matching has been able to help you do. Also knowing that, and I'll touch on this later, not all banks are created equally, and know that there have been some interesting variability between the banks. But really wanted to ask you both, what would be your next steps or next thoughts? How would you want to use matching next? Where do you see the next wave of benefits coming from using matching?
Well, for me personally, our most manual process that we still have outstanding that directly feeds into me in the accounting is my payroll process. I still do manual journal entries at the end of every month for all of our payrolls, and we can have 4 or 5 payrolls a month depending on how I would love to get a feed from our payroll processing and then work with Yvette again to do some sort of matching that reconciles our entries for the payroll expenses to the reports and the data we get from our payroll processing to make that a little more user-friendly.
Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate that, knowing what's coming up. Glad that been able to help so far and look forward to helping you further in 2021. Your challenge there with payroll is not unique. And again, look forward to helping you and Pacific Woodtech with that challenge next year. Thank you again, both Heather and Yvette. Really appreciate it. Quick polling question before we go to our next case study.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we're at our second polling question. So here we go. Of these examples, which was most applicable to you and your needs? Again, don't forget you need to click on the button or the radio selector there on the left and then hit the submit button to record your answer. And this is the second of 4 polling questions. And as a reminder, you need to get 3 and stay on for 50 minutes to get your CPE. So of these examples, which was most applicable to you and your needs? Is it reducing the time required to do manual work? Getting real-time, faster visibility into results? Getting more time to just do my job? That was always something important for me when we rolled out BlackLine many years ago. Is it improving compliance? Or in general, just having fewer errors and risks because you're able to have more automation and take the human error out of it? So again, to just take a couple seconds here to take a look at this and think about your response, choose the best and hit submit. And don't forget, we should have time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have questions for anybody on this call, please do not hesitate to go to the Q&A, submit a question, and we will do everything we can to get through all those questions at the end. So before Steve and I take a look at the results, let's just go ahead and give you guys just another second or two to get your answers in. And all right, with that, we're going to go ahead and close out this poll. All right. So Steve, looks like the majority, over 51%, really want to just reduce time required to do manual work. Any surprises there?
Not really. That is fantastic, and that is just right in the wheelhouse of what matching can do. I think for next time, Mike, I think what we ought to do is have an all of the above option on this polling question.
I don't disagree. Well, next time we'll make sure to do that. So, all right. So thank you all for answering the polling question. And with that, we're going to go to our next part of the presentation, and I'll turn it back over to Steve. Thanks.
And now for our next case study, First Midwest Bank. I want to first and foremost thank Tiffany Tucker and Dan Schiapicasa, who will be presenting. Tiffany, thank you very much, and thank you First Midwest Bank for providing time for you to be able to be with us today. And Dan, thank you as well. Look forward to hearing more about what you have done. Let's just sort of start with what were some of the challenges that you guys started with, and then what did you do with matching to help address some of them? And then I'll just let you guys talk.
Thanks, Steve. Our first challenge was taking a look at all of the manual and time-consuming processes that we had on the reconciliations that we were doing on a daily basis. We looked at all the data and the extracts and the way that we're processing, which obviously there's a lot of different extracts that we were using that we needed to kind of review, and then go through all of that and to find the best way to kind of formulate how we were going to go forward with matching. And Dan definitely played a key part in that.
Yeah, and when First Midwest Bank reached out to RGP, they had tinkered with the matching product a little bit, but they really, I think, had a kind of a challenging situation because they were looking to try and do 30 accounts over a 6-month period. And when we initially had some discussions with them in terms of the scope and the accounts that they're looking to do, you really got a clear understanding that the 30 accounts weren't all that similar. So they were very diverse, different matching logic, different data sources, and so on. And so, and we're looking at more than 50 data extracts. So it was a pretty challenging project because there were so many kind of dependencies, a lot of variety, and like Tiffany mentioned, there were some reports now that they're using, but a lot of that wasn't necessarily automated. It wasn't like scripted and generated as, let's say, text files or CSV and things like that. So there was a lot of work that needed to be done if they wanted to go live with the 30 accounts. So, Tiffany, anything you want to add in terms of kind of the situation that we're walking into? First Midwest Bank also, by the way, was a user of account reconciliations within BlackLine, but they were really looking to automate as much as possible a lot of their account reconciliations. Right. Tiffany, anything you want to add before we start talking about some of the things that we did?
Sure. I think that you made a good point. We did make many attempts at trying to do this on our own, but we really needed to bring in someone like Dan with his expertise to kind of take a look at how we were doing things and then translate that into a better way in BlackLine so that we could find the efficiencies without driving ourselves crazy, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I think this is, one of the challenges, and this is where when we started the project, really the first thing that we did is we focused a lot of effort and time on assessing the various accounts that they're looking to implement. What's the data that's required? What are the different data extracts that they need, and so on. And going through 30 different accounts would have taken a lot of time. So what we did is we actually chose 10 of the more complex accounts, also the ones that kind of represented the different types of accounts and data and so on. And so we actually spent quite a few meetings sitting down with the preparers of the reconciliations, the super users, and walk through the different recons that are currently being performed, what are the data extracts that are being used, what's the matching logic, and we actually mapped it all out. We had process flows, we wrote out what the logic is and so on, and because we were really trying to get a good understanding of what we're about to embark on. And the other thing too, one of the kind of the key principles that we're trying to strive is to keep things simple as much as possible. So rather than setting up a different data source, right, for every single account, what we did is we create a universal data source. So a lot of times the same data extract was being used for multiple accounts, and in some cases it made sense to merge some of the data together. And so we really needed to have a good understanding of what that data source looks like if it's going to be universal. And because by keeping things simple, by having kind of this universal data source, it just keeps things simple and makes the process a lot more efficient as we move forward. So you can see that the data and the data extracts were really the priority. And this is where Tiffany, I know, Tiffany, you spent so much of your time going through the data extracts, right?
Yeah, I got to get real close and personal with that information and where it's coming from and how to make it flow to the system and what it represents. And we spent a lot of time at the front of each account, not only analyzing the data and trying to automate as much as possible, but trying to make sure, like you said, what would be the right extract to use that would give us the most bang for our buck there. I had personally worked with the IT team that was developing the extracts they would provide us samples of that, and we would have to kind of comb over it, compare it to the paper copy that we're all comfortable with, and just to make sure that we weren't missing anything. And then we would bring in the people that balanced every day and had them review it and provide their insight. And then our final step in kind of developing these extracts would be to Dan to figure it in BlackLine, and then we would do another step of verification and make sure that the data is accurate. Again, this is going to be the lifeblood of all of our accounts and all of our matching, so we wanted to make sure that the data was correct and done the best way we can right off the bat.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to talk a lot about data extracts because obviously it's just so key. And I think, one of the key things was Tiffany really playing that role as gatekeeper within the organization. So, not only did we have data that we had to pull in from external vendors such as banks and vaults and so on, and so she was the main liaison to just make sure we were getting what we needed from them. But a lot of the data was actually coming from internal reports and had to be scripted by IT. And so this is where, Tiffany just leveraging her kind of knowledge, her insider knowledge and her relationships and so on, was able to kind of work with the different parties because, we weren't the only project within the organization. Obviously there's a lot of complexity in terms of creating custom scripts and so on. And so this is where, Tiffany was able to focus a lot of effort and really leverage her kind of knowledge and relationships just to make sure that these data extracts are delivered timely because, in my experience, data extracts tend to drive the overall timeline of the project. So that was just a key role, and I would, any project, BlackLine project, just make sure you have somebody that's really focused on kind of the data and the data extract. So, and Tiffany, I mean, as we're going through, right, we didn't get everything right the first time. Sometimes.
No, we did not.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, it gave us a good opportunity to look at everything. So we, as Dan said, we didn't get it right the first time or the second time on a couple of them. We were going through one report in particular, and we used an existing extract of the data and tried to conform that into what we needed for BlackLine. However, as we got into kind of the matching and the balancing of the account, we realized that the way that the original extract was built wasn't actually accurate. So, it gave us an opportunity to kind of go back and with fresh eyes and look at the data and just make sure that things are mapped correctly. And in other cases, what we had thought we would use in BlackLine for balancing ended up being a completely different report entirely. So, being able to walk through this process with someone who knows how to evaluate the information and how to guide us in this overall mapping definitely gave us an opportunity to find better reports and better data to do the matching that we're doing.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we spent a lot of time on the data, and IT was key as well because, as I mentioned before, we had this universal data source, and we had a lot of extracts where the data was coming from, and certain accounts needed certain data, such as like branch numbers. Other ones needed, let's say, ATM numbers, and other ones needed, totally different information. And so, and a lot of that key data was used for matching as well. And so we really leveraged IT as much as possible to, as part of their scripting to make sure we're getting some of the clean data. And in some cases, we really leveraged the import utility within BlackLine to do some of the data transformation, use some of that advanced functionality. In fact, I think one of the things that really made a difference in this project is because there's a lot of manual adjusting entries that are entered by users, and within the description field, there's key information that was used that needed to be used for the matching. We actually used regular expressions with naming conventions to actually kind of separately list out some of the key data in fields that could then be used for matching. And so that was key to make sure that some of these manual journal entries would match to some of the system entries. So we spent a lot of time going through and leveraging some of that advanced functionality. You know, we captured as much information as we could in the data sources as well, not only the key fields that were being used for matching, but then also other fields that would be used for reference or analysis and so on. But we want to make sure that when we did merge all these different data extracts as if we're importing them into BlackLine, right, we want to make sure that everything was consistent. And so there's a lot of time spent doing the mapping to make sure that as we merge two files, right, that the data fields were consistent. So there's a lot of analysis just to make sure that we had some clean data so that we can increase our matching success. You know, we did a few other things as well. We used the mirroring functionality as well, so that when we imported data, it would make a copy, and then we would use that copy to essentially make sure that the subledger detail agreed to the GL entries to make sure that it was complete and accurate. And so again, you know, a manual step that we automated using as much of the BlackLine functionality. And because, you know, one of the risks is that there's so much data coming in from different places and it's all being merged that you lose track of things. We did label, you know, the data in terms of what the source was, again, using some of the import utility functionality to append text. So really trying to make sure that not only were we getting accurate data in all the fields that we needed, but also that it was something that was sustainable and that was going to be maintainable by the client. And Tiffany, I mean, as we're going through the project, I mean, we really focused on making sure that, you know, these solutions would be maintainable by the client, let's say, once RGP left. And I know you and I talked a lot about some of the things that we could do. Maybe you can share some of those, you know, kind of areas that we focused.
Yep, sure, Dan. I mean, this was a huge part of the project overall. We're trying to look into the big picture because obviously we're not able to peel you away from RGP to work for us full time. So we do need to be able to keep going with the processes that we put in place. So from the start, we did bring in the whole team that would be doing this on a daily basis. You know, we did a lot of training and hands-on experience with the matching and the mapping out of all of the information so they understand how the logic is built. We're also working through this as a shared implementation. So what that means for us is RGP and then the project team here at FMB that will be supporting this long term is working hand in hand in building the data and understanding how the system extracts are built and the match sets are built and all of the settings. So it's been a very educational experience for all of us in getting to know the system better and getting to know our accounts better, and then just getting to know how to do this on our own going forward. Just one example of one of the accounts that we've put into production is got over about 10,000 transactions per day that we would have to match. The current process before BlackLine was using an Excel spreadsheet, and it took us over 2.5 hours a day just to go through the process to balance that account. And since we put it in BlackLine, we're able to get that account balanced in about 30 minutes. So it's definitely been a time savings in all of this that we're doing. The other thing that I was really excited about is the reporting functionality within BlackLine. It gives us a better visibility of transactions that are aging, things that we need to address. And it's also going to help us with the recons that we send out to the branches for them to clear items, because we can customize the report that they see and make it so that it's clear and they can understand what it is that's being carried and they need to address. So those are really exciting for me. As we kind of move forward, as Dan said, you know, we're working to make this sustainable and maintainable for the future. And with the training that he's providing us, we're looking to expand matching onto other accounts that we're balancing that we weren't part of this overall project. And also looking into adding that journal entry feature so that we can increase our automation and simplify overall processing and balancing. So this has been, to me, this has been a very great learning experience and a very successful project. And I've enjoyed working with you, Dan.
No, actually, this has been a lot of fun. You know, I've learned a lot myself as well, and it's actually been really interesting to kind of take, you know, this kind of diverse field of accounts and really try and kind of leverage as much as possible from the matching product to really make this successful. So I'm definitely excited with what we've done, and I'm looking forward to hear more and more about kind of how you move forward with even more matching within your company. So, and it was also great working with you too.
All right. Well, that takes us to our third polling question. Sorry if there was a slight audio delay there. So here we are, third polling question. Which of these key considerations would be most helpful to you? So as you're thinking about this, again, third polling question, give you an opportunity to read these over. Just go ahead and hit the button and hit submit like you've been doing for the last two polling questions. And with this, again, this is the third one, so you know this is 3 out of 4. So if you answer 3, you're good. Stay on for the 50 minutes, and you will get your CPE certificate popping up later. So, which of these considerations most helpful? Is it planning, the requirements, the data, the pace, experienced partner, or Steve, you got this one right, all of the above? So at least on this one, we got all of the above. So any thoughts on how people are going to respond here, Steve?
I hope I didn't lead the witness too much, but thank you so much, Mike, for adding all the above to this one. I have a lot of project management background, so I tend to lean toward planning, but honestly, all of these are really, really important. It really helps bring it all together. And so there's no wrong answer. And I think a couple of our questions that folks have asked that we're going to follow up with, I'm wondering if data isn't going to be the leading answer this time.
Yeah, it'll be really curious to see what comes out here. So let's go ahead and take another couple of seconds to get your answer in. Again, if you do have questions for us, we should have time for a few minutes at the very end to get through a couple of the questions. And again, if we don't get to your question, don't worry about it. We will follow up via email later. So with that, let's go ahead and close out this polling question. And there we go, Steve. Everyone liked all of the above. A little bit of planning, a little bit of data. So I guess, you know, you were right on both of yours, and of course, you know, people 53% liking all of the above. So thank you all for answering this third polling question, and let's go ahead and continue on with the rest of the presentation.
So thank you again, Tiffany and Dan. Really appreciate it, and thank you for those of you who have been participating in our polling questions. There may be one more coming up. So just want to have your attention as we come down the home stretch here. And then just taking a bit of a step back, because we got a lot of feedback on this particular slide from B2B and felt it was important enough to reiterate some of the things that we have seen. We call them considerations, some may call them lessons learned, but also reminders as you plan matching, whether you've done it 1,000,000 times, done it once, or have never done it at all. And so some of the things in particular, taking into account some of the changes that BlackLine has done with the transaction matching product. With that shift, if you will, to a lot of responsibility and ownership with the customer, with the implementation partner, these are things that you want to keep in mind as you go through doing matching and match sets and transaction matching product. So planning, and that's why we say it 3 times, you can never have enough planning. But planning from 2 perspectives. With your portfolio of match sets, really run it like a portfolio. You don't have to do all of them at once. You can if you want, but go after those that have the best reward with the least amount of effort or least amount of resistance, if you will. And so even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet, just to create this list and be able to manage it from there. And then for each individual match set, plan. Again, make sure that the data is accessible and in the right format. And as discussed, as we talked with Pacific Woodtech, one of their learnings, not all banks are the same. Some banks can be a bit more challenging than others. Some could do a BAI file in their sleep. So understand where that data is coming from and the amount of time it may take to get it or have access to it. That also goes internally. Some of your IT departments require upwards of a 6-month window or request, if you will, to get the work queued up. Additionally, make sure your requirements are clear. What is it you want to get out of this? It's one of those where, yes, you can sort of do a proof of concept, but what you really want to do is get that understanding. This is part of that planning. Are you talking 2,000 or 2 million transactions? That's one of the things to consider to make sure how big is big. Is the value really there? Is it going to take as much time, for example, to pull in 2,000 transactions as it would 2 million? And the benefit's the same? Or maybe the benefit's going to be a lot more if you can do 2 million. But as part of that, make sure your requirements are clear. What is it you're hoping to get out of this? Are you looking to shave costs? You're looking to shave time? What is it you're wanting to get out of it? Another one, in addition to all banks not being the same, not all ERPs are the same. And make sure, and this goes also back to planning, get your IT team involved sooner. Sometimes your data team as well if they are 2 separate groups, but not all ERPs are the same. Some do require some pre-processing. Some of them that are a bit more fluid, if you will, than others. Maybe it's a heavily configured or customized on-prem ERP. It may take some extra time to really plan it out, get the data out as you want it, and you may even have to have a little data modeling experience to be able to pull out the data the way you want it, to keep each row uniquely identified, to be able to match it and get the results you want. So again, yes, there is planning, but also ERPs are different. So, I'm just going to say that it's not that any of them are bad. It's just that they are different. How they are structured, their database structure, function, things like that, needing to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of your ERP, and that's where your IT and or data teams can assist with that. Source data is key. I know this is one that we have been hearing even before big data was the big thing. Source data is key, making sure it's clean. Don't expect BlackLine's transaction matching tool or another system to correct data at source if it is not clean, if it's not integrated, etc. Clean it at source. Make sure that your data is integrated. Another option that we have seen with our clients, also utilizing RPA as a way to get that data clean at source before being brought into BlackLine or anywhere else, financial reporting, corporate management reporting, dashboard, SharePoint, whatever. Getting data clean at source, there are options. Also, pace yourself. Some clients, they want to do 12 match sets at a time. That's fine. For some, that would just totally inundate them. But others, if they only did 2 at a time, they would never get done. So really pace yourself. Part of our approach working with our clients, and as you've heard here, we love to partner up with our clients, and we want to make sure that they are successful now and going forward. A lot of times we'll lead it initially, do 2-3 match sets initially, but keeping our clients partnered up with us throughout, maybe the next wave of match sets they do, and we're sort of sitting there next to the side, sort of coach and guide. And then after that, maybe they're off and away running, which is great. And we're always available if they want some support or just a friendly phone call. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And a lot of that does tie into an experienced implementation partner. And we do recommend that. If you're highly experienced with transaction matching, that is great. Leverage your experience. What we have found is that we've been able to see a lot. We've learned a lot. No, this is not a State Farm commercial, but we do share that information with our clients. Ultimately, our clients make that decision. We want to make sure that they make as an informed a decision as possible. So thank you very much. We're about to go into our next polling question. And again, hope you've been listening. I'm going to hover on this slide briefly so that you can look at it. You know, plan, requirements. You know what? Not all ERPs are the same, because there is a polling question coming up. Here comes the polling question.
All right, so there we are with the last polling question, and I love this one. What is your favorite color, or favorite flavor, not color, flavor of ice cream? It's been a long day, sorry folks. So we've got a lot of different choices here. And I love putting in these fun ones, just kind of breaks up the monotony. So is it vanilla, chocolate, chocolate chip, anything chocolate, strawberry or some other fruit, anything from Ben & Jerry's? Or don't ask me now, it's December, talk to me in June. Any thoughts here, Steve? Because, I mean, frankly, if it was me, I frankly like straight vanilla, just a good vanilla with a good chocolate syrup on top.
Yeah,
How about
I have
you?
to be careful. My wife is a recovering chocoholic, so I can pick anything but the second one.
Okay. Well, let's give everyone, this should be hopefully a really easy one, and we'll wrap up the presentation and give folks, we'll have time for one or two questions. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up and see what our audience thinks. It looks like everyone should be maybe a recovering chocoholic here with the majority coming in at that 35%. But I definitely also feel the way the rest of you do, the 11% there about December. Here in the Midwest, it's a little cold right now to think about ice cream. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up and get to the questions. So, Steve, back to you.
I appreciate it. Tiffany and Dan, thank you so much. We've got a couple of really good questions here. That's great, and really, Dan, really enjoyed that. I'm going to ask real quickly how well you've worked together. Just love the collaboration. How's your experience help other clients? Thank you, First Midwest Bank, for letting Tiffany join us today with some of matching for our clients. Really appreciate it. And with BlackLine's transaction matching product,
real quickly, I mean, I think one of the things that definitely experience has helped in terms of, every matching scenario or use case is unique and different. So I think having that experience can, help solve or maybe address some of the unique or complex matching issues and so on, but also allows to anticipate maybe some of the potential issues. I mean, for First Midwest Bank, I mean, we've talked about, data sources being so key, and, there's a question in terms of, information system analysts and whether they're dedicated or not. We certainly had a couple resources that were part of the project from beginning to end, and they were kind of our key folks that were involved with us throughout the whole process to make sure that we're getting the data extracts that we required. In this case, they weren't necessarily full-time dedicated, but certainly there was a lot of emphasis in making sure that they had the time available to be able to give us the data extracts that we require, as well as making sure that Tiffany was kind of involved as well and had that key role, making sure that the data extracts were being prioritized appropriately. So that's from me, Steve.
Thank you. Yvette, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure. For me, I think it's just the endless possibilities that the import utility tool actually offers to clients. So as Dan has mentioned, there's not a one-size-fits-all type of case or scenario. Just having the flexibility to just go in and assess the client's needs and be able to bring their vision to life is like priceless. So for me, that's what I enjoy about, or that was my aha moment.
Great, thank you. And then one last question we have that's been brought in, and thank you, this one from Mark Cheatham. Oh, go Flames. For First Midwest Bank, Dan, were there any dedicated information system analysts with the bank that championed the data extracts? And this is specific to First Midwest Bank. Just in general, really what we've seen does depend upon the company, how it's organized. Data resources may be within the IT area. They may be outside the IT area. So it really depends company to company. But at First Midwest Bank, Dan, were there dedicated resources and that were able to champion the data extracts?
Because we're dealing with multiple systems, we definitely had a couple analysts that were very involved in our project from beginning to end. I think the other key thing I wanted to mention is that we also had executive sponsorship from the IT side as well, because it was so critical to make sure that we had kind of the internal resources to be able to ultimately generate the data extracts that we required.
Great. Thank you. Mike, back to you. I'm seeing the clock and just really want to thank everybody for attending today.
Well, thank you. Thank you to RGP. Really appreciate you guys participating in this. It's been a great webinar. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we have a great several sessions left as part of BlackLine's Finance Innovation Week, another in just an hour, 3 tomorrow and 2 on Thursday. So hopefully you get the opportunity to learn some more about making the move to modern accounting, earn some great CPE. And again, we'll have these on demand soon. Unfortunately, they won't be CPE eligible at that point, but at least you'll still be able to get the great education. So on behalf of BlackLine and RGP, thank you all for being here today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.